Hi, everybody. I'm happy to have you here, and I'm sure you're having a great time learning new things and being inspired. I am Nomi Bahar. I'm a human potential expert, psychotherapist, holistic counselor, author, and coach. And today, I've been doing this for a very long time. Today, I'm going to talk to you about tapping into your leadership potential. Your leadership potential is nowhere other than inside of yourself. Being a leader is a state of being, is a state of mind. It's a stand in the world, and it starts inside. So we want to be able to tap into that potential, and that's what I will be talking to you about. I would suggest that you write notes because I will be asking you some very personal questions, and you will think about them among yourself, and hopefully that's when you're going to gain the best insights from this conversation that we have. Our last 10 minutes will be for questions. So let's start. Leadership from inside out. This is what we're talking about today. Let's look at traits of a powerful leader. And as I'm speaking about those traits, think about yourself and write some notes down. How are you doing with each one of these traits? Self-knowledge, self-awareness. Great leaders cultivate self-knowledge and self-awareness continuously. They know their abilities, their skills, their talents, their passion, their vision, but they also know their shortcomings, and they're working with that. How are you doing with that? An honesty moment. The next trait, true passion for a cause. Do you have that? Something that you want to create, that you want to develop, something that you want to shift, some way to make our world a better place. Clear vision and a solid path. That's what a leader has. Passion that takes them into vision, into a plan, into choices, commitments, actions, evaluation, and you might need to go around a few times to get to where you need to go. But you must have the clear vision and the solid path. How are you doing with that? The three biggies: honesty, integrity, responsibility. I don't have to say much about that. Just write something down for yourself. Communication skills. We know how these are so essential. How are you doing with that? There's always a lot to learn here. Team building abilities, the ability to work with others, to unify, to inspire, to bring about effective achievements. How are you doing with that? Flexibility, creativity, openness. Again, how are you doing with that? Generosity of spirit. A good leader has tremendous compassion and understanding, acceptance for other people, working with other people. How are you doing with that? So we spoke about very important traits of a good leader, but I want to ask you now, where inside of yourself you can find all of that. Because you have to find it inside of you, right? Where? Where is the gold mine inside? What do you think? Well, let me tell you something. Inside of yourself, there are 3 different yous. 3 different parts of you are sitting inside of yourself, and that's absolutely normal. Sorry, everybody has them. And not all the parts of you are this potential leader. So what are we talking about? This is you at your best. We're going to skip that for now. I call that the 3 aspects of the self. Let's just imagine that these 3 parts are sitting inside of you, and most of the time there is conflict inside. So the first part is the emotional part of you. The second one is the defensive part of you. And the last one is the expanded side of you. Let's try to understand this. Here's another picture. So the emotional self, as you know, is emotions. It's very vulnerable. It's full of joy, full of hurt, sometimes anger, fear, all kinds of emotions. Usually this part of us gets somewhat bruised by life, by conditions. At around age of 7, we start developing this part, our defensive survival structure. And this can be different structures. We'll talk about it in a minute. But this defensive structure is coming to protect the emotional part of us, because that part is vulnerable. What happens is that many times this defensive survival structure that we have constructed, it can be very confining and restricting. So not always helping us, sometimes really choking us and caging us. We have a third part right here, the expanded self. This is where the highest wisdom of you sits. You can imagine that this part is like a drop of cosmic wisdom, divine knowledge, a drop of God sitting within your own consciousness. And this is the part where tremendous compassion and wisdom lives within yourself. So now that you know those 3 parts, who do you think is the best leader? Is it the defensive self? Defensive self can be pleasant and helpful and all of that, but it could also, some defensive selves can be hidden, withdrawn and shut down, and some can be blaming and attacking and controlling. Is it the emotional self, full with tremendous emotions? Or is it the expanded self, that part of you that has your wisdom and your highest intuition? I think it's very clear that this is the part that has potential, that has purpose, that has the ability to move mountains, I would say. This is the power that we have within ourselves. Courage, insight, spiritual connection, all of that lives here. So, do you know that part of yourself? I'm sure you met it, but are you living from this part of you? Are you navigating your life from this part of you? And most people are not doing that. Most people are run by their emotional self or by their defensive self. So, question, now that we understand which aspect of us is the best potential leader, and I think we are understanding that. Look at your life for a minute and see what is limiting your life. What is causing you suffering? What is causing inner strife within you, conflicts? It's between you and yourself, so you can be totally honest. It's not that part of you, I promise you. It's either emotional trauma that has not been resolved or defensive structure that is too tight and too oppressive. This here is the answer for us. So what I do with my clients is I teach them to tap into this part of them and cultivate and strengthen that part. And then, which is even more important, I teach them to heal, to use this part to be the coach, the healer, the parent, the leader, and help the emotional clear the difficulties and help the defensive structure, the defensive self, relax and normalize. So the inner coaching is tremendously important here and not an easy thing to do. And that's what I'm doing with my clients. It's obviously very, very necessary because nobody teaches us this, obviously, and we need to learn how to do that. Where do we get stuck? I think we can understand this now. The defensive is on top of the broken pyramid, and it creates tension, excessive effort, burnt out. And because of that, as you can see, those facets of life, the body, the emotions, the dialogue, which is relationships, the creative expression, the life path, which is the life direction, the life purpose, gate of silence, the facets of spiritual prayer, connection, and the gate of knowledge. I call them gates. These are facets of life that our inner being flows through. So as you can see, everything gets murky difficult when our defensive is running our life. This is what happens to us. We become exhausted because we have insecurities and fears, and we're trying to compensate all the time. The defensive is trying to compensate for that. And it's working really hard to prove ourselves, to look perfect, to be perfect, to make sure that everybody likes us, that everybody approves of us, and so on and so forth, that we achieve, achievement is good. There's nothing against achievement, but the anxiety that's behind that, that's what is creating this exhaustion inside of us. So to summarize, the inner coaching, taking this very powerful, wise part of us and teaching it to coach and to create inner peace, inner balance, to optimize, to heal, to comfort, that is tremendously important. And this is what we do in Gates of Power. And that's when you create this kind of holistic life. The expanded is there at the top of the pyramid. It is constantly healing, guiding, and relaxing these other parts. And there is a nice flow. The inner team is working in unison. And that's when the gate of the body is flowing much better. The gate of emotions is freer. The gate of dialogue, which is relationships, is getting better and better. The creative expression is flowering. Life path becomes very clear, very focused. Silence becomes deeper, and knowledge. So think about your own life for a minute and those facets in your life. Which one of them needs improvement, needs realigning? The gate of the body, the gate of emotions. Think about how you're doing with these facets of life. Gate of dialogue, relationships. Relationships are very important. How are you doing with this one? The gate of creative expression. Are you as creative and expressive as you can be? The gate of life path, purpose, life direction. How are you doing with that? Focus. Gate of silence. Gate of knowledge. All of these facets of life flower when your expanded self is leading the way in your life and inside of yourself. And you want to be optimized in all 7 areas of your life, all 7 gates, because they're all connected and they're all important. So to summarize, we were talking about important traits of a powerful leader. And we said the source of these traits are within ourselves. The source is our expanded self that sits right there, but it needs to be cultivated. It needs to get skills to be that inner leader, to be the healer, to be the parent, to be the best friend. And we talked about that path to create true inner power, true peace, strength, and balance. So today we just took one little step towards understanding how we can get there to that place of internal leadership that radiates to you being a leader everywhere, in your life, at work, in your community, everywhere. And when we do this work, and it takes a little time to do this work, you can master your unique leadership style. You can eliminate fears and frustrations. You can train yourself for success. You learn to communicate and connect, and you leverage your talents and your skills. You can get all of that accomplished. Obviously, there's a little bit of work here. And if you are interested in doing this work, in participating in the workshops or trainings and meditations, they're all available. gatesofpower.com. Here is my email, my LinkedIn. You can reach out to me if you want to ask more questions, if you want to talk further. My book, Gates of Power, Actualize Your True Self, is on Amazon and is accessible. So we can do it. It's work, but it's beautiful work. It's the self-actualization, self-healing, and self-transformation work, which is the pearl of this life, of this living. I'm going to stop sharing now so I can go into your questions, and hopefully I can answer as many as I can. If not, reach out to me